it's been a massive journey. I think for me, when I left school, I hated to conform to what everyone was telling me you should do. You know, you need to leave college, go to university, you need to then get a job and then stay in that job until you retire. And I was just like, I hate this. I don't even know what it is that I want to do. So
all right. Welcome back to Vaginally Speaking. Lindsey, I am so happy you're here. You wear so many hats: an entrepreneur, a mom, a wife, and a founder, wellness advocate. And somehow you make it all look graceful and real, not as messy as some of us would say. Before we get into your brands, can you start by sharing a bit about your journey and what led you from your job as a makeup artist to now building these multiple businesses and stepping into this wellness and empowerment for women?
God, well, it's been a massive journey. I think for me, when I left school, I hated to conform to what everyone was telling me you should do. You know, you need to leave college, go to university, you need to then get a job and then stay in that job until you retire. And I was just like, I hate this. I don't even know what it is that I want to do. So, you know, I hate the pressure. I just wanted to experience as much as I could and figure out what I liked, what I didn't like, and go from there. So it kind of sent me on a journey of just constantly trying to create a business, figuring out what I wanted to do, what I liked, what I didn't like. I did an event management degree, went back and trained as a makeup artist. I loved being creative, but things kind of changed when I got pregnant. I was working in makeup. I was doing like 16-hour days working on set on TV. And when I got pregnant, I thought I want to be able to sort of work from home. I want to be able to, you know, if my husband works all over the world, he's a comedian. And I thought if he goes on tour somewhere, I want to be able to be in a position where I can go with him. And also I've got my own thing. The number one thing for me when I was pregnant was I still want my own thing. And I think I've been kind of like reflecting on this about why that is, but that's for a whole different day. But I was always really passionate about having my own thing that I worked on, that I was creating for myself. And, you know, I experimented. I launched 2 lash brands. I then sold one of them. I then went on into property investing, trying to flip, you know, rent properties out here in the UK. But I didn't enjoy it. I hated the industry. You know, people say one thing and then they do the other. I just didn't like the industry. I didn't like the people. I met some incredible people, but on a whole, constantly being let down. And I thought, you know, it's that sent me on a journey of what is it that I wanted to do. And then after I'd had my daughter, I was very much just feeling very lost. I sort of had looking back now, and I know what it is, but in the time I didn't. And I just felt very lost. And in my head, I'm thinking, God, all these new mums that I'm hanging around with, they seem to have all their shit together. They seem to know what they're doing. They seem to mothering a child seems to come really natural to them. And it just didn't feel like that for me. I really struggled with it. But then no one was speaking about it. So I kept my mouth shut. And then I just started to think about what it is that I wanted to do. And then eventually, you know, I did a lot of work on personal development, and I realized I want to help people, but I still didn't know what that looked like. But then my husband, he was on the podcast, which I think you guys are getting it out in America now, Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO. He did an episode talking about biohacking and what he does to stay young and how he keeps his high energy. And one of the things in this conversation was he was talking about supplements and what he took. And after that episode aired, both of us we checked our inbox on Instagram and we had hundreds of messages like, what does he take? What's the dosage? Where do I get it from? How can I trust it? And I thought, wow, most people are quite similar to me. My husband's a guinea pig. He loves looking at the science. He loves testing, doing double blind trials, reading all the science behind it. Whereas I'm like, I can't be bothered. Just tell me what to take and give it to me. And most people are like me. Most people don't have the brain capacity to even try and go there in the head. They just want something that's convenient and easy to take and something that they can trust. So I started to like research into it just purely so I could send links to people to buy if there was a multi-supplement version that existed. And it didn't at the time. You know, we have NMN, transresveratrol, fisetin, curcumin, there's 7 ingredients in our first product. And it didn't exist at the time. And I thought, do you know what about if we launch this? It'll make things easier for people. It'll give them energy. It changed my life. Especially as a new mom and lack of sleep. it helped bring my skin, my hair, my nails all back to like how they were before, even better, like from before I was born, like, had a baby. And with the energy was a huge thing for me as well. Like obviously lacking in sleep was, is a hard thing as a parent. And I thought, you know what, let's test it. Let's go with a small batch. Let's see if it sells and let's go from there. It's the first time in business that I've not done like a 2-year, a 3-year, 10-year plan. I just sort of thought, you know what, let's just launch with this and see how it goes. And we sold out within 24 hours. We sold out again we really can't, because we self-funded everything. We really kept trying to have as much stock as possible to keep up with the supply and demand. And we launched 2.5 years ago, and we've just celebrated our 2-year anniversary. And yeah, we've scaled, we've grown in the UK, sort of an exclusive really. We will be launching in the USA next year, so that's really exciting. And we've recently just launched our second product. And what our products aim to do is to help people to feel younger for longer. So we focus, I know America sort of focuses more on the word biohacking, but here in the UK, we focus more on the word of healthspan, which is feeling younger for longer. If you're going to be 80, but with the energy of a 50-year-old, I don't want to be 100 and feel 100. I want to be as old as I possibly can, but feel as young as I possibly can. So it's not just supplementation, it's all different things. And that's what the brand's about. And a part of that is really encouraging connection and really analyze your sleep, your stress, your relationship to self with others. What's your nutrition like? What are you consuming online? We talk about everything because it all feeds into the foundation of life and how to live it, happily. And that's really important for us.
Oh, this product sounds incredible.
And just to say as well, last month, we actually launched our second product, which is our libido supplement as well, which is called Jolt. And that's a unisex bedroom supplement, because we did a lot of market research with our customers. And what was happening was they had this new burst of energy. And then it depended on obviously different ages, but they really were like, I really want to start connecting with my partner again. I found my life. And, a lot of them were seeking that connection, and they're maybe with a partner that doesn't share the same kind of libido that they do. So we thought, is there something again where we could combine, multiple. So we've got 9 ingredients in our Bolt formula, and it's been brilliant. We've had amazing feedback. We've had our guinea pigs trying it over the last few months, and the feedback's been amazing. So yeah, that's what our brand's all about. And I'm excited to bring it over to America.
Oh, so first of all, this brings so much to mind, Lindsey. You talked about in the beginning about kind of feeling that bit of lostness after having your daughter. And I say a lot to people, because nobody wants to talk about it like you did, of saying that you were in conversations with moms and it seemed easy to them, or they seemed very happy. Nobody really talked about it. And I like to tell a lot of my patients and women that I talk to that, like, I absolutely hated being pregnant, and it's okay to say that. It didn't mean I didn't love my daughter. I also felt like I needed a purpose outside of being a mom, because I think that for me to be a really good mom, I needed to have this other purpose, this other passion, and I could show that to my child. And so it sounds like for you, you found this by knowing, like, you lacked energy, you lacked sleep. You saw out there that all these individuals were also seeking validation and resources that could help them with just that. And you guys developed this product, first the Jolt, that could help individuals with that, with clean ingredients. And you were seeing people getting what they needed and being able to help empower them, which I feel like then probably empowered you and gave you that passion. And then the libido, because we also all know that we want more libido. When we have more libido and we can feel that connection with other people, and we get an orgasm a day, or, if we can, how incredible we all feel in our body. We feel confident. We make better decisions. We feel connected to ourselves and to our partner. We can be so much more dynamic in our life when we have the connection of all of them. And I think that that's just what we're all looking for, is that connection of bringing us back to being human and not worried about all this other external stuff, right? And so you briefly talked about, to me, off of the podcast, about this experience that you had in Barcelona that I would love for you to elaborate on if you're willing to, and how that now has, you've created this beautiful products with your husband, which also, bless your soul, that you can work with your spouse, because me and my spouse very much have to be on different ends. And I think that that is a really beautiful thing that people can do. But then you've now created these other businesses and these other rooms for women to belong to. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, I think so. Just to kind of go back as well, and just to be completely transparent, like when I was thinking of launching Jolt, it stemmed from helping people in terms of making a product convenient. Because I just, in my head, I was like, oh, it's just me who can't be bothered to take all these different things. It's a pain to open like 7, 8 different jars. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was just me. So I was like, oh, if I can make it convenient, obviously hearing from people going, oh, I can't be bothered ordering from different companies and seeing if they're third party tested, doing that research, people couldn't be bothered. So I thought, right, well, the way I can help here is to make the product convenient and easy and simple and not use all this complicated sciencey language. Let's make it simple for the everyday user who maybe I'm not educated in the science world with all these big technical words that white Silicon Valley men use. Like I have no interest in it. So that's what originally the launch was about. But actually when people have taken it and repeat customers, and the feedback is actually it's had all these different benefits, which energy, skin, it's helped increase muscle mass. We've done a clinical trial and we can prove that it's increased the muscle mass, and also it's helped release free testosterone, which again I had no idea about. Like, we work with doctors obviously to formulate some products, but what was interesting in the clinical trial is we all have like testosterone within our body, men and women, and I had no idea with this, so I'm just going to make it really simple. But basically it's with our life choices, whether we stay up late, drink alcohol, takeaways, all the different things, we don't look after ourselves, those kind of testosterone cells floating around become dormant, they're asleep. And what our product was proven to do was sort of wake those cells up, which means you've got the testosterone in your body alive and working now, which does give energy. It helps with skin, it helps with all these different things, and with joint pain and inflammation. So that was just a complete fluke. In terms of working with my husband, we really enjoy it. We've got a third business partner in the company as well, called Dan, and he's my husband's best friend since 8 years old. We've met swimming. So it's great because we've all got our roles. My husband, a comedian, he was a copywriter before he did that. I'm more of a relationship person. I love meeting and networking, building, creating with other women, especially. And then Dan's more into the sciencey, technical side of it. So we've all got our kind of roles that we play. And I just don't think the company would be what it is if the three of us weren't in it together. In terms of the event that I went to this year, which you mentioned. So just to sort of give it a bit of context around it, I've spent so many years always investing in business development, how to scale, how to grow a business, how to do this, how to do that, how to make money. And a couple of years ago, I thought, you know what? I'm so sick of doing that. I feel like I've got to a certain level now. I feel like I'm hearing the same stuff over and over again. I'm putting it into action. I'm good. Let's start investing in my personal development. So what can I do to improve my own personal things? And a lot of it was like, ego and just analyzing everything about me. Why do I do certain things? Is it because I want to do them, or is it because I've been told or conditioned to think that I should do those certain things? And last year I had a theme. So on my birthday, I set a theme for the year, and I really wanted to learn more about intuition, because I felt like I'd been so manipulated by people over the years, being in narcissistic relationships, being manipulated by people around me. So I thought, right, I'll tap into that. I'll start learning about that. And I've got an interest. I keep hearing people talking about the feminine, the masculine, and sensuality. And I thought, I really don't understand anything to do with that. So let's start looking into that. And then I found, as you know how the algorithm goes, I found this lady called Dr. Amanda Hansen. She's Midlife Muse on Instagram. She's brilliant. I just love everything she stands for women. And she's based in America, and she was doing an event in Barcelona. So me and my best friend went. It was a 2-day event, and we had no idea what was going to happen on this event. And to be honest, I'm so glad that we didn't, because had we had known, we probably wouldn't have gone, because it was so far out of our comfort zone. But it was the best, most amazing experience of our lives. My best friend Rachel's, we've known each other 20 years. She said the same thing. It permanently changed us. And we had no idea. There was I won't ruin it, because Amanda does these events and I wouldn't want to ruin and spoil what goes on at the events. But if you do go to them, I would highly recommend, going and just letting go and and throw yourself in at the deep end. You'll come out a changed person. But yeah, it really changed the way I started learning all about the patriarchy, which I didn't know. I never was educated about it at school, or probably was, but I didn't listen because I hated school. It's not something that a working class family understands. And, I've just never, my husband, I've been with him for 13 years, and he is a huge feminist, and I'm in his office. So I'm in his library. He has lots of books. And so he's always tried to teach me about, not in a non-patronizing way, but about the importance of feminism, especially of us having a daughter. And I'll be honest, I would completely roll my eyes and be like, oh, the F word. But actually, I've always been a feminist. I just didn't realize, I didn't understand what it actually was. So it's been really interesting learning about when we actually tap into our sensuality and we connect to our body and we connect to our womb space without sounding a bit crazy. Once we start to learn to listen to our bodies and not trying to justify with logic, that's when we start, really tapping in and tuning to ourselves. And so I just thought, I'm not going to all the time, especially for me. My issue was, if someone was, say, in business, or there was, someone who's had a successful business, and they would tell me something, I would take that as gospel. Even if my sort of gut feeling would say that doesn't feel right, I would go with that. I would still go with what they said, because they seemed to know what they were doing. They would do it with such confidence. And so this is where I've said I've really fallen for things in the past and have been easily manipulated. So it's really something I wanted to get a hold on. And so Amanda really taught us to connect to our bodies and how to do that, and what it means when we do that, and what it means for the women and the future generations, and what we're teaching our young ones. And yeah, so since doing that, I've really tapped into it, and it's been life-changing, because when you're tapping into your sensual side and prioritizing pleasure, prioritizing connection, prioritizing loving yourself, and really honoring yourself and giving yourself that time and space, you give your body time to reflect and to basically, it sounds crazy, but just start listening to yourself. So sensuality and intuition are linked, and I had no idea. So it's weird that I chose those two themes. So I've just been really on a journey reading the Pussy Reclamation book by Regina. There's so many incredible books that I've read around this topic. There's Beauty Myth as well. I've just finished Girl on Girl with Sophie Gilbert. There's just so much now that there wasn't around back then. So I think it's really important, and it's something that I'm really passionate. My daughter's 10, and I'm constantly teaching it to her, and it's very interesting having a 10-year-old now and watching society put their expectations on her. And she had her parents' evening last night, and the teachers sat me down and they were like, oh, just I have to say, she is a force of nature, and and she asks lots of questions, and and I'm like, yes, that's what's important, to question everything, to ask questions, to be to analyze where things come from, and I think that's really important.
I have a couple things off of that. One, I also have a 6-year-old daughter, and it has been the most beautiful and empowering thing to watch our daughter grow and ask these questions and reflect on how I want to answer and how I want to teach, because then it brings me back to how I was brought up and how I then perceived myself and my body and my power. And so I also have a daughter that most would say is very driven and asks lots of questions and has no time for anybody to put her down. And she's, we also say very emotionally mature, because I was the girl growing up that was called dramatic or too emotional or too much, right? And so I hated that, because I felt like I was just excited, and I also really wanted to embrace those emotions. And so growing up and always being kind of told to quiet down was hard for me. So I've made sure with both, we have a 6-year-old daughter and a son that will be 4 soon, that we just really talk about all of the emotions, and that we can have these emotions, but just appropriately, how do we then express them depending on where we are, but that we need to embrace those. So I love that. And I totally understand wanting to make sure that we educate our children in a way that keeps them confident and empowered and curious without just like dimming it, which I feel like kind of goes into the F word that you talked about, the feminist. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I feel like for the longest time I'd hear the word feminist and I'd be like, oh, that's a bad word. Like, yeah. How dare you call me a feminist? And as I've gotten more into the space I want to help create for women and having my daughter, I'm like, absolutely, I'm a feminist, because we're fucking goddesses. And if we knew that, and we knew the power we hold and what we can bring to the table and what we can do, and especially if we can do it together as women, wow, we are unstoppable in the greatest way. And probably the scariest way, but like I now embrace that fully. And I'm like, absolutely I am, because I'm here to tell you that we are not below, we are equal, and we will make changes, and we will be able to talk about the things that we were told were, not ladylike to talk about. Why weren't they ladylike? Who decided that they weren't ladylike, right? We know the answer to that, but I can talk about these things. I can feel these things. I can do these things. And so I've fully embraced that. And I can't wait to look up Amanda Anson's retreats, because this sounds incredible. And it makes me excited that you talked about like the womb area, because one big thing that I like to talk to my patients about is that we know that the pelvic floor, the womb area, is not just physical. It's very emotional, very psychosocial and trauma filled, right? And we have, if you've bared children or not, as women, we hold everything there. And to me, that is why our gut is always right, if we would just trust it. But you're right that our mind kind of likes to try to overpower it. And so I just really love that you talk about the sensuality and the intuition, and just if we trusted ourselves more, and we really understood ourselves more, and that gut feeling, and listened, what could we really feel and do with our life, and what kind of difference can we make? And maybe your body isn't telling you need to make this huge difference globally or in your community. Maybe it's just a difference that you need to make within your household or within your friend group, right? It doesn't mean that all these things have to be elaborate, although I think that most women, I should take that back. I feel like a lot of women like to make an impact if we can, and create that space for people. So yeah, and I without drawing it out, there's a book that's launching today, and I was just at a conference where this individual chatted, Erin Gallagher, and she wrote the book Hype Women. And I feel like if you haven't heard that, you have got to look it up. It talks all about, well, I haven't got to read it, but she explained it, and my book is coming this week. I pre-ordered it, but it's all about mean girl energy and the patriarchy, and just what we could do if we just recognize the mean girl energy and shut it down. And, it doesn't mean, as Taylor Swift would say, my energy is a luxury and not everybody can afford it. I do believe in that. but it doesn't mean that you have to be mean to people that don't deserve your energy, right? There's still respect. And so, yeah, I just kind of, that was a tangent for you there, Lindsey, but I don't know if you have anything off of that, of what I talked about.
That book sounds amazing. I'll have to get that, definitely. I just find it so interesting. And I'm almost angry the fact that I'm like, the book Sophie Gilbert, Girl on Girl, she's a British author, and what's really interesting about her book is the impact of marketing and TV in the 90s and the 2000s, which is when I was growing up. I was born in the 80s, and I had no idea the amount of impact, like, you know, American Pie had with you know, all those kind of films, specifically, you know, how women were portrayed in films, the male gaze, you know. Do you remember American Pie? Like,
yes.
That film, and you know, the girl, the foreign exchange student, was in the guy's bedroom and she was masturbating, and it got, you know, it was being broadcasted to everyone on the internet, and she got shamed and sent home back to her country because she was caught, and just all these little things. And like the Spice Girls, like here on the TV, you know, when after Jerry and Victoria Beckham had a baby, they were on a UK TV show, and then they were being asked about their weight. And then, like, when you think about Britney, this is all in this Girl on Girl book, it's brilliant. And they were talking about Britney, about how she just turned 17 and she was on the front cover of Rolling Stone cover, clutching her Teletubby Teddy in, you know, raunchy underwear. Like, that is fucking sick. Like, first of all, what is going on with the world? Who actually thought that that was acceptable? Like, she's a child, and why have we got these grown adults, you know, just, it blows my mind. And also, like, Lindsay Lohan, when there was a countdown when she was turning 18, so she's legal, and this is just a little messaging that all these girls are, you know, having growing up. And, you know, when we were talking about growing up, you know, and you were saying you were made to feel like you were too much, or, you know, you're excited. And I had this conversation with my friend the other day about, I'm finally comfortable in my own skin. My whole life, I've been not made to feel, but because I was insecure probably in myself, when I'd say something, or I'm opinionated, I'm passionate, I'm excited, people would be like, oh, you know, they'd flinch almost. And I'd be like, oh, I need to calm down. Or, you know, people would say, oh, you calm down, you're aggressive. And I'm thinking, in my head, I'm like, I'm not being aggressive, I'm just being passionate. And I could never understand why they would perceive me in that way. But actually, it's because I was challenging things. I wasn't maybe agreeing with certain things. And for me, if I don't care about being the last person standing, I'm standing up for what's right, whether I'm by myself or not. And I think some people don't like that. And there was a few years ago, we were on a holiday, and there was this little girl playing with mine. And a few of the people around the pool were like, oh my God, that girl's so much. She's about the friend, saying, oh, she's too loud. She's too excited. She'll need to calm down as she gets older. She'll need to learn that she needs to control herself. And I remember saying, but why? There's nothing wrong with her behavior. It's you that finds it, you know, maybe a bit too much, but that doesn't make her wrong. It doesn't make you wrong either. You're entitled to your own opinion. She might be a bit too high energy for you. That's fine. But don't knock someone's confidence by saying, you know, you talk too much or you're too deep, and no one wants that. And, you know, I have definitely been in relationships before I was married where when I met them, I was confident. And over time, they slowly try and squash it. And it's so subtle. And I just look back and go, I cannot believe I was one of the women that were manipulated by a narcissistic man. And it's just insecure. And I just think there's so many women now, and not just women, you know, there are men in narcissistic relationships where they can't be themselves because they're being battered emotionally. They're being put down all the time, made to feel like they're too much. And I think what I love now about social media is there's so much education around, and there's so much content where, you know, for a long period of time, people were made to feel like they were by themselves in their feelings, and they were the only person feeling those things. But I've had like about 3 women message me, go, I had no idea that I was in either a coercive controlling relationship, or I had no idea I was in a narcissistic relationship until I saw your content. And I just thought, wow, I was just sharing my experience. I was just sharing it for content, you know, whereas it meant something to them, and they've actually made a change in their life and left that relationship. And I just think that's what it's about when it's coming to help other people, is sharing our experiences. And I hear so many women go, yeah, but you know, my experience wasn't as bad as theirs. They had it worse off than me. And I'm like, why are we invalidating other people's feelings? And this is what happened to me, you know, with a family member, really. I remember after I had my daughter, and I felt so low and I felt so down and I felt so lonely. And obviously I hadn't found my purpose at that point. And I just couldn't tell you why I was down. I was just crying. Obviously now it's obviously postnatal depression. But when I vocalized and said, I feel these feelings, from their perspective, they were trying to make me feel better. They were trying to say, well, you know, you've got all these things that you're doing. You're going here, you're traveling there, you're going on this holiday, you live in this area, you've got that car, like you've got everything you need. What more is it that you want? And I can see where they were trying to come from, but at the same time, obviously I was just like, oh, I need to keep my mouth shut, because they're right. I am privileged. I am in a position. You know, some women don't even get to carry a baby, or some people don't even get to have that experience. So I should stop moaning. And I've got a house. Some people don't have a house. I've got, you know, and so it invalidated my feelings. And it took years later to go, actually, no, my feelings are as valid as anybody else's. All our feelings are valid, regardless of what your status is or what your financial, you know, what you've got in the bank. It doesn't matter. We all have feelings, and it's important to validate each other's. So I think once we got rid of that taboo of, you know, your feelings don't matter because you've got X, Y, and Z, I think that'll start opening up a lot of conversations for all women.
I completely agree. And I think kind of how I would summarize what you just talked about is the power of vulnerability, right? The power of us being able to share. The people that saw your stories, they saw that like you were human, right? There may be people that are so privileged, but we're still human. We still have feelings. We still have things that are going to happen to us that we want to share. And that's okay, because you know what? There's always going to be somebody that's quote unquote better off than us. And there's always going to be somebody lower. And I agree with you that it's okay to open up and share. And I think for a while, there was this culture that people thought, you're one-upping me. You're trying to one-up me by sharing. When I think if you just stop and think about it, no, we're just trying to connect as humans. And I feel like I catch myself a lot. And at first I thought that I myself was trying to one-up people. When somebody would tell me a story, I'd want to connect and tell them mine. And I felt like in my head, it was to me saying, I understand your feelings, or I validate your feelings, or I've been there, or maybe I haven't been exactly there, but I've been somewhere that feels near it, right? And I want to connect with you and help you. But some people will take it as, oh, you're just trying to tell me that you have a worse story. And I think that if we just realized again that we're humans, and that our feelings are valid, and the things that we think are okay to think, and if we share those stories, we could touch one person that would absolutely change their life. And I think that there's so much beauty in that. And I think there's so much then to say about that. When you talked about the different famous people being idolized or put in these positions to idolize them as these sex icons, right? My mind goes a couple different ways. One mind gets very disgusted that like we sexualized these famous people, like, especially these women that were 17 years old. Now that I have a daughter, I'm like, that's disgusting. Those are children. Why are we putting them on there? But then you have these women who maybe women of different sizes and different backgrounds and shapes that are like, I'm going to wear this because I feel good in it and I'm empowered and I want to have this, right? But for some reason, our society wants to split us into two. They want to sexualize what they shouldn't and make women feel like they need to be in this specific category and do these specific things. And then what has that created our mind to think about women and our bodies and our sexuality and sensuality? And then you have these other women that then they're almost shamed because how dare you think that you can come out and wear this outfit, and, you know, shouldn't you know better that if you wear something like that, something's going to happen to you and it's your fault because you did it, right? There's this very weird mixedness for females on where do we stand and how can we stand and how can we just be looked at as a human and a person versus these sex icons or these, you're a raunchy person or, whatnot. That's kind of goes into, could be a whole nother conversation, but that I think is just it's so hard and it really creates what we think. And we were also talking about, Lindsey, the way that we're our upbringing, and if we were brought up in a religion or a certain culture, how that's made us reflect on who we are, what are our supposed to be's, what are we supposed to do, and how we view intimacy and sexuality and understanding our body. What's your thoughts on that? Or do you feel like you have anything to share of like how you were brought up and how you then viewed something, and did it change for you at some point in your life of what you were kind of brought up feeling? For myself, I was brought up, Catholic. So you didn't look at your body like it was a temple. You looked at it like it was really meant as a purpose to bear children and be intimate with your spouse for them. And, here's you dress proper, you act proper. Otherwise, you're going against the word of God. And I've really learned as an adult that that's not who I feel God is. God's not going to judge me in that way. He wants me to be a powerful female. And so for us, our family, it's really changed the direction of things for us of how we are spiritually.
Wow, there's so many different points there.
Sorry.
I think they're so interesting. I've just been making notes. So I just want to go back to, I think what's important is, so like, for instance, the Kardashians, I'm finding it really interesting at the moment with Kris Jenner, I think she's just turned 70 or 69, and she has had a lot of work done, and it's being pushed and pushed. I don't know what it's like in America, but it's been pushed all over social media, all in the news about how incredible she looks and how, she's defying, aging as if it's this real accomplishment. And I think what's important for me to say, because I do have a biohacking brand and our focus is on cellular health. So I'm not saying, all our ingredients focus on to keep us younger inside. It's not, we've got this product because we want to get rid of your fine lines. I think actually why are we, again, we've been conditioned, especially women, to have to remain looking young. We have to look young to be desired, and also to for all different reasons to work, for anything, it's all about how young can we look. And so for me, in terms of the Kardashians, I respect them as business women. I think they're fantastic. I think, but I think a lot, it is damaging. I didn't realize how damaging it actually is when a lot of their products that they're pushing is to target women with insecurities. And I think that's really sad, actually. So that's one aspect of it. And I think in terms of aging, like I watched Interstellar recently. It's my favorite film. I watched it years ago and I watched it again recently. And I think what's the most beautiful thing in that film is actually aging and what a privilege it is, and looking at the faces and the skin and the different, I don't know whether you've seen it. It's such a great film, but this is why I really love Amanda, because actually what a mentor like Amanda does is I can't really remember her age. I think she's somewhere in mid-50s, and she's confidently like, I'm claiming myself. Like, I'm not following beauty standards that have been put on me. I'm not going to dye my hair. I'm going to age naturally, and I'm not going to plaster myself in all these beauty products. I'm going to wear what makes me feel comfortable and confident. And I think she is one of the most sexiest women I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, because she's just so comfortable and confident with herself. And I think actually, again, women, that people are preying on their insecurities to make money. Let's not forget that they're preying on women, young girls, and it just makes me sad. In the UK, they have a lot of treatments to have their lips a certain way or have their chin a certain way, or, cat eye. And I just think it just makes me so sad to think it's such a privilege. We get one life. The fact that we exist is a crazy miracle anyway. We're floating on a rock, and people give a shit about what people think of them. And it just blows my mind. So that's like the one thing about the aging I think's important. But in terms of pleasure and sort of how I've been brought up. I was brought up Catholic. I went to a Catholic school. I spent my whole time probably standing outside the classroom door when it came to RE, the lesson, because I dared to ask questions. I would ask for evidence. I would ask how they know certain things would happen. And the teacher would say that I'm being disrespectful and that I need to leave the room. And I could never understand. I'm like, I've asked to put my hand up. You've given me, you've said that I can speak. I've asked calmly a question, but because I'm questioning God in the Bible sense, they were saying that I was naughty, I was, disruptive, I was all these different things. So they're things that I've carried with me, and I'm going, actually, no, I wasn't any of those things. I was just asking a question. What scientific evidence have we got? And I'm very curious. I'm still a very curious person. So I really instill that in my daughter, ask questions. And so growing up, it was very much, well, you don't talk about sex. We didn't really speak about it. When I got older, I know my nana used to say, and my auntie used to say in disgust, if they ever saw a scene on the film, or if a man, like on a TV series, was cheating on the wife, my nana and my auntie would always go, "Oh, well, that's what men are like. Men are only after one thing. Ooh, sex, and sex. Sex is for the man, and and kissing." It was never. So I was like, it's not something that I would then look forward to growing up, because it was never said in a way where, a woman can own that as well. And actually, during that experience, that was never communicated. And I get it. It's because of the generation they were brought up in, patriarchy, all that. So it's, I'm not blaming them at all. I'm just acknowledging, how I was brought up, and obviously in the Catholic Church. And when I'd have relationships, it was never a case, like I didn't have any sort of sex drive in relationships, because, well, why would I? I didn't have an orgasm until I met my husband, who was a few years older than me, but he really interested in whoever, obviously at the time he was with me. Your pleasure matters as well as mine. Like it's, he was all about pleasure. He's done a lot of research on women, and it was just really interested. He was the first person that actually cared about my pleasure, whereas all the boyfriends that I'd had before were just like, it was all about them. They had no interest. So for years, I thought there was something wrong with me and my body, or, and speaking to a lot of women actually who have had similar relationships to me, they're like, oh my God, I had the same. My boyfriend never did this. We never did that. It was all about him. And I thought that there was something wrong with my body, or he didn't like a certain thing about me. And actually, it's just because they're with sexually immature men, probably insecure, don't have the confidence to do some, to please the lady. And I think what's been really amazing, especially with Amanda, is she's really about pleasure, and not just sexual pleasure, everything. What are you doing today to bring some form of pleasure to yourself? And I think it's about just bringing awareness to everything you do consciously. For years I've been on autopilot, and now everything I'm doing, I ask myself the question, why am I doing this? I've been to a few different events or gone out with people recently, and I'm like, do you know what? I'm not doing that again, because I didn't feel good when I was there. It didn't bring me pleasure. It drained my energy. I will never do that again. I'll never go to that place again with that person ever again. And that's what I'm sort of leaning into this year. And it's all about pleasure, not just sexually, but with anything. I've been, my theme this year, so I just turned 38 in September. So my theme for this next year is minimalist. I am a hoarder. And again, I realize it's been connected to dopamine hits and, self-worth. I'll buy that new makeup product because maybe it'll make me feel this way. And, I would just buy things unnecessarily, unconsciously. I'll buy it because I might need it one day. Now I'm like, I've no wonder my room was messy, because I've got too much shit that I don't need. Why have I got this? So I started asking myself, why am I buying these things? So I've had a huge clear out, and straight away, this is literally, I'm a month into it. I've not bought anything for a month. I've saved a lot of money. I've cleared so much rubbish, and I feel so much better. So again, it's now I want to, instead of buying fast fashion, I want to invest in pieces that bring me pleasure and bring me joy. I don't want to just buy something because it's cheap and I might wear it one day, so I'll buy it just in case. It's just about making those conscious decisions.
Okay. I've got 3 phrases that came to my head. No is a complete sentence. So you talked about things that you went to and it didn't bring you pleasure, right? And I think that there's so much power, and we feel like in society today that we just need to say yes all the time. What can it bring me? What can it bring me? But sometimes we just need to say no, and what can that bring you versus saying yes. Everyone deserves orgasms, and it does not mean you're broken. I also, ironically, Lindsey, did not experience my first orgasm until my husband when I got together with him. And I got together with him about 12 years ago. So you said 13. So interesting. There must have been something in the air. But I agree that I think women, my two thoughts with that is definitely immature men that aren't there to pleasure the female, right? And know that it's about connection, and it should be about both parties involved. But also women, I feel like we really need to understand our body more. And if we understood our body and what felt good to us, what didn't feel good to us, and then how to communicate it, we would have so much more power to have those orgasms we deserve. But there's a lot of shame around women understanding their body. So one of the biggest things I tell a lot of my patients or women I come in contact with, when they say, what's one thing I can do? I tell them to take a mirror and look at themselves. And I'm like, look, what? And then I say, reflect on what just happened. What went through your mind when I just told you to take a mirror to look at yourself, right? Because a lot of women will be like, ew, no, I'm not doing that. Why? That's your body, right? We should feel empowered in that. So that was an absolute huge thing. And then I should have wrote it down. What was the third thing you were just talking about?
About pleasure, as in it's not just about sexual pleasure. It's about, just everyday pleasure.
Yeah. So understanding, I love that, because pleasure doesn't have to be sexual. And if we realize what was more pleasurable for us outside of that, we could understand what are triggers for us too, that also dim the light. And so I feel like when we start paying attention to things that make our body feel good, and that doesn't, again, have to be sexual, what makes us feel good and our mind light up, that will help us understand then what doesn't, and what we need to start saying no to. And you discussed the minimalist. And I always say, I wish that somebody, when I'm on vacation, could come in and literally get rid of everything in my house, because I would probably have no idea. But for me to say no to something and get rid of it, it just, but what if I need this in 3 years at this random party that somebody invited me to? So I really like that, because I think that's true. And now it's going to make me want to try not to spend money for a month and see how much I can save. Because I also get that dopamine hit of like, oh, that was a great deal. I had to buy it. Why? So
true. So true.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap this up, Lindsey, because I feel like we could talk on and on. But is there one thing that you feel like in this journey, in these themes that you've had, that you feel like you want to tell the listeners of to embrace, or something that you've learned that has been like the most life-changing, powerful thing for you?
I think the biggest thing for me is I read a book, I can't remember the name of it now, The Untethered Soul. And in it was a quote about, I am not my thoughts, I'm the observer. And I didn't understand it for quite a while. I reread the book recently, and I was like, oh, it makes sense what it means now. And I didn't realize that our internal dialogue, obviously everyone has an internal dialogue, and it's just bringing awareness to it and going, the voices that you can hear in your voice, whether they're positive or negative, you are not those thoughts. You're the observer of the thoughts. And I think what's powerful about that is once you understand that quote and understand that as a concept, that you are not your thoughts, you're the observer. What it means is when you do have a negative thought, oh, I look bloated today. Oh, I feel ugly. Oh, I feel this, I feel that. You can say, and this is what I did for years, and it is not instant overnight. It will take, months, years to completely change it. But it's having the awareness and saying, I hear what you've just said, the negative insult, but fuck off, and replace it intentionally with, do you know what? I feel good today. And name one thing that you like. I like my hair today. I like my lipstick that I've chosen today. I like this. And I just think slowly but surely rewiring your brain to not allow like negative thoughts in it. And if there is a negative thought, ask going back, why? Where's it come from? What's the root cause of it? Has someone told you that about you? That's stuck? Has someone laid a seed of doubt that's grown? It's just bringing awareness to your body. And I think that's been the biggest life-changing thing for me. And also just randomly, we were talking things about people knowing our body. We did an event recently with an incredible pleasure journalist here in the UK. She's called Emma Louise Boynton. She's writing a book at the minute, and we interviewed her, and one of her biggest advice when I've spoken to her is, we should stop faking orgasms because we're not doing anything to our partner. We're teaching our partner to press the wrong buttons. So, once we learn about our own bodies, we can teach our partner and have amazing orgasms. So that's what I would like to, pardon the pun, but finish on.
No, I love that because we all love and deserve a good orgasm. So, Lindsey, thank you so much for being open and generous of talking about your journey and your story. Where can listeners find you and learn more about the Jolt and the Yes Button Club? And where can my audience go to hear more?
If you go to my Instagram, which is Lindsey Kane with a 0 on the end, and in my bio, you'll be directed to Jolt and the Yes Button. And just to say as well, I have had a few inquiries about doing a dinner club overseas. So that's exciting as well. That's definitely on the plan for the future. So I will give you a shout when that happens.
Oh, I would love that. And everybody, this will be all in the show notes. So you can go straight from the show notes straight to Lindsey. I want to thank you again. And I can't wait for that dinner party to be over here so I can join.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.